This video is sponsored by Skillshare. So this is the iPhone 13 and this is the iPhone 11. While 2 years senior of the iPhone 13, I checked this phone out earlier this year and I found that as long as you're careful with the battery life, you can absolutely still use this thing in 2022. So, 2 years apart, a different design language and several new updates later, which of these should you buy? And also, how much has really changed? Well, starting out as usual, in terms of specs, the iPhone 11 actually packed a pretty powerful processor at the time. It was fitted with an A13 Bionic processor, whereas seeing as it is 2 years newer, the iPhone 13 comes with an A15 Bionic. I was actually pretty impressed by the A13 Bionic when it was first released, and while there are differences in things like performance, along with things like the A15 having more transistors and supporting 5G, I don't really live in an area where 5G is available, but we'll talk more in terms of actual performance later on. Both do have 4GB of RAM along with the variable internal storage options, the iPhone 11 having 64, 128 and 256GB of internal storage. However, the iPhone 13 starts at 128GB, going through 256GB and of course topping out at 512GB. Personally for me, I found 128GB to be plenty, and most of the time I have been able to get by on 64 just fine. However, that did kind of change when I started getting really into Apple Arcade. So, if you are planning on keeping multiple of those really big games on your phone, then it might be a wise idea to choose a slightly higher storage option, especially if you're going on the iPhone 11 route. That said though, I haven't had any issues whatsoever with 128GB. In fact, I think my first MacBook actually had 128GB. Crazy. Finally, in terms of weight, the iPhone 11 was actually pretty heavy, weighing in at 194 grams, whereas the iPhone 13 is lighter, weighing in at 174 for the standard and 141 for the mini, which is what I have. As for key specs, well, that's pretty much it. Now, while we are going to be covering things like battery life and screen resolution later on, I'd much rather talk about my real-world experiences with these pieces of tech. And while there are some cool real-world experience upgrades to the iPhone 13, I have found most of the changes to be iterational. Next up, we have design, build quality, and button layout. Both phones do feature a similar design language of glass and 7000 series aluminium. However, starting with the iPhone 12, the bezels on the side of the iPhone line were squared off again. I personally think this looks awesome, and I've actually found it helps me drop my phone slightly less. Maybe it's in my head, but I feel like it's grippier. It's just something I've noticed. The iPhone 13 again does feature that ceramic shield technology, just to make the screen more durable, which is always nice. In fact, I dropped this phone on my iPad Pro. My iPad Pro is now cracked. This is not. Personally, I wouldn't recommend relying on this, and unless you are super careful with your phone, I would always recommend putting a case on it, just in case. You do not want to drop one of these things. The iPhone 13 also did receive a smaller notch, which is the first time this has been done on the iPhone line since it was introduced on the iPhone 10. It does give you a little bit of extra screen real estate. Realistically, I don't really see how useful that is, but all the same, it's what people wanted, so it's nice to have. Both phones do feature an IP68 water resistance rating. However, Apple claimed that the iPhone 11 can survive in 2 meters of water for 30 minutes, whereas the iPhone 13 is claimed to survive in up to 6 meters of water for 30 minutes. And while it's always nice to have more protection on your phone, realistically, I don't precariously hold my phone outside indoor scuba diving pools. Seriously, 6 meters of water is a lot. Buttons do all feel really nice and tactile on both phones, which is always nice to say. Even after all of these years of use on my iPhone 11, the buttons are still lovely and clicky. Basically, again, the button layout hasn't really changed since the iPhone 10, but I mean, it's a good button layout. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. After this, we have the screen, and honestly, I think this is where these two phones start to separate a little bit. The iPhone 11 has a more traditional LCD panel with a resolution of 828 by 792, whereas the iPhone 13 has a Super Retina XDR OLED screen with a resolution of 1170 by 2532, or on the iPhone 13 mini, 1080 by 2340. On the standard models, both screens are the same size at 6.1 inches, and while the resolution of the iPhone 11 isn't necessarily apparent at normal usage distance, I significantly prefer the colors and contrast offered by the OLED panel on the iPhone 13. Everything's just a lot crisper, contrastier, and due to the nature of OLED, dark mode will actually save you battery, and watching videos on this display is genuinely awesome. Both phones do have True Tone to keep your colors nice and balanced, and the time-based haptic touch for secondary interaction, and both work well on each. Realistically, while the iPhone 11 screen is still pretty excellent for an LCD panel, I do personally prefer the better, higher resolution screen on the iPhone 13. However, that does have a caveat, which we're going to be talking about later. Spoiler alert, it's in the battery life section. But overall, I personally do prefer the screen on the iPhone 13. It's also perfect for watching classes on this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity and learn new skills. I personally joined Skillshare as I wanted to develop my productivity, but I quickly learned that there's actually a huge variety of classes to choose from. I'm personally not fantastic at taking care of myself and relaxing, so I decided to learn how to relax with the Ultimate Self-Care Playbook by Jonathan Van Ness. There's also Plants at Home by Plant Queen if that's something you prefer, to help you recenter after a hectic week. Skillshare is ad-free, so you can stay in the moment while you're honing your new skills. There's a new premium class launched every week, so there's always something new and exciting to uncover, and the entire catalogue of Skillshare is now also available with subtitles in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and German, which is also nice. I have found Skillshare to add a tremendous amount of value to my life, and the first 1,000 people to use my link or code will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare. Thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Check them out with the link below. Following on, we have the Face ID, and honestly, to this day, I'm still impressed with the iPhone 11. In my opinion, this was the first major change in the iPhone's Face ID technology. You could now unlock your phone much faster from multiple angles, and I'm glad to say that's still the case. Well, of course, this is also true for the iPhone 13. In fact, now, thanks to iOS 15.4, you can actually unlock your phone with a mask on. Again, with the iPhone 13, it honestly doesn't feel like much has changed in this regard, but this isn't necessarily a bad thing. As I said, the iPhone 11's Face ID is still impressive to me, and while I do certainly hope we get a better system with the iPhone 14, I don't really know what Apple would do. I'm hopeful though. After this, we have the camera, and to be totally honest, on the surface, it really doesn't look like that much has changed. Both have a standard wide and ultra-wide configuration, the iPhone 11's wide camera having an aperture of f1.8, and the ultra-wide having an aperture of f2.4. The iPhone 13 has the same aperture for the ultra-wide, however, it is slightly faster at f1.6 on the wide angle. Both phones do have a true depth front-facing 12-megapixel camera with an aperture of f2.2, so again, doesn't look like all that much has changed here. But what about performance? Honestly, photos on the iPhone 11 continue to stun me to this day. I am amazed at how good the dynamic range is, how sharp they are, and while it is slightly better on the iPhone 13, I am seriously still impressed with the iPhone 11. Both phones obviously do feature night mode, and again, while the iPhone 13 does certainly take the lead here with its wider aperture on the main camera, along with the technology being available on all angles, the iPhone 11 is still no slouch. And on the angle it does have, it has great low light performance. In terms of video, both do shoot 4K and up to 60 FPS on all cameras, and both look pretty fantastic. With the iPhone 13, I have personally noticed slightly better dynamic range, but as I said, both look great. The iPhone 13 has cinematic mode. What's that, you ask? You know how portrait mode blurs the background out on the iPhone line so you can fake a full-frame DSLR look? Well, cinematic mode finally brought this to the video side of things, which I've been wanting for a very long time. Don't get me wrong, there is still certainly some improvements to be had, but it's a very nice feature nonetheless. Obviously, both feature slow motion, 1080p and up to 240 FPS, and while it's not the epitome of quality, it'll still hold up for some fun slow motion. Okay, so overall, while the iPhone 13 does have a slight edge in the camera department, I do still think the iPhone 11 really pulls its weight in 2022. Photos are great, videos are great, and honestly, I'd be happy to use either as like a point-and-shoot killer. Alright, so now moving on to the most important part, how's the OS/app performance? Both of these phones are running iOS 15, which is nice, and the performance on both is excellent. Scrolling through everything is nice and smooth, system functions work well, and overall, I have no complaints with either. However, I do have more confidence in the iPhone 13 staying good for longer, purely because it's a newer phone. In terms of the more intensive performance though, while watching videos on both phones is certainly free from lag, I do have to say that I prefer watching videos on the iPhone 13. Again, due to that better screen. It has to be said, there is something about a really nice screen on a phone that I really like. In terms of gaming, again, thanks to that super powerful A15 Bionic processor, gaming is still going to be better on the iPhone 13. That said, I do find the casual gaming experience on the iPhone 11 to still be fantastic. So if I just wanted to kill some time and play some casual games on my phone, the iPhone 11 would certainly be up to that. Overall, again, while the iPhone 13 does pull ahead in this category, I certainly don't think the iPhone 11 is bad by any means. Following on, we have these speakers, and it's basically the same. Both phones feature a stereo speaker configuration with both the front-facing speaker and the main speaker being used in conjunction to create a louder, wider sound, and to be honest, both are totally fine for some casual listening. I can't really tell the difference, to be totally honest. Okay, so to wrap this up, finally, let's talk about battery life. The iPhone 11 features a battery size of 3,110 mAh, whereas the iPhone 13 features a battery size of 3,227. My personal iPhone 13, the iPhone 13 mini, features a much smaller 2,406 mAh, so quite a big difference. Initially, when I got the iPhone 11, I was genuinely shocked by the battery life. It could easily get me through a day and a half of use without needing to charge this phone up. And while this has degraded due to the nature of lithium-ion batteries, it is still about as good as my iPhone 13. Again, while the battery life is no slouch on the iPhone 13, honestly, I am gonna have to give this one to the iPhone 11, because all of this time later, it still holds up. If you currently have an iPhone 11 and the battery life's starting to suck, so you're thinking about getting a new phone, replace the battery. Seriously, your experience will go like, what was that? Also, much cheaper than shelling out several $100s on a new unit, if you're lucky. All in all, I'm gonna give the battery life to the iPhone 11 on this one. Overall, while I do like both of these phones, and while I stand by the fact that I think the iPhone 13 mini might just be my favorite phone I've ever used, I must say, I am still truly impressed by the iPhone 11, even in 2022. It's cheaper than ever now, you can pick it up new on Apple's website, but as I said, I think the iPhone 13/13 mini is probably one of the best deals out there right now. This phone is amazing value for money, so if you fancy spending a little bit more, getting a better screen, better camera, and a bit more longevity, then go with the iPhone 13. But if, like me, you are a huge fan of the $499 iPhone that could, then maybe consider checking out the iPhone 11. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know, by the way, which of these two phones do you enjoy the best? Do you like the iPhone 11? Do you like the iPhone 13? Do you like something entirely different? Feel free to let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading those. If you want to help support these videos and get your name in the credits, along with access to some of the wallpapers that you've seen in these videos, then consider joining the channel as a member. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, then smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.